You know, some people say time heals everything, but when you lose your mother young, time doesn't heal. It just teaches you how to carry the weight better. I was 13 when my mum passed. Cancer. One of those long, slow kinds where you know the ending, but it still hits like a truck when it comes. She was the kind of mum who made everything feel safe, even when things weren't. Warm laugh, gentle hands, always humming in the kitchen like she had music playing in her soul. She remembered the names of all my stuffed animals. She left little notes in my lunchbox with smiley faces and silly puns, stuff that doesn't seem like much until it's gone. The house didn't just feel empty after she passed. It felt hollow, like someone had taken all the colour out of it. Dad tried. I'll give him that. He was just as lost as I was. He'd stare off into space at dinner. Sometimes he'd cry quietly in the living room after he thought I'd gone to bed, and I'd lie there, hugging her old robe, listening to the silence where her voice used to be. I kept her photos everywhere, framed on my nightstand, taped inside my school locker, even one folded up in my wallet. It helped me feel like she wasn't completely gone, like maybe she was still watching over me somehow. Some days, I'd play the old home videos on our dusty DVD player, just to hear her voice again. It was the only thing that made the silence bearable. We weren't okay, but we were surviving. And part of that survival, at least for me, meant keeping her memory alive, remembering her birthday, wearing her old sweater on hard days, talking about her like she was still part of us, because she was. At least, she was to me, but that didn't last forever. Eventually, my dad met someone new. Her name was Karen. At first, she seemed fine. You know the type. Overly cheerful, always smiling a little too wide, trying a bit too hard to be liked. She worked with my dad, and from what I gathered, they started spending time together about a year after Mum passed. I didn't blame him, not really. I knew he was lonely. We both were. But even when Karen first started coming around, something didn't sit right. It was the way she looked at the photos in the living room, not with sadness or sympathy, but more like they made her uncomfortable. She never said anything at first, but I saw how her eyes would linger on the pictures of my mum, especially the one of her and Dad on their wedding day. It was like she was mentally rearranging the house to fit herself in. I tried to be polite. I wasn't angry at her for dating my dad. I knew he was allowed to move on, but deep down, I still felt protective of his memory of my mum, of my memory of her. Karen, though, she wasn't interested in sharing that space. Little things started disappearing. First, it was a photo of Mom and me at the park, gone from the hallway shelf. Then her favourite mug, the one with the chipped handle she used every morning, vanished from the cupboard. I asked Dad about it, and he just kind of shrugged, said maybe it got broken or packed away during cleaning, but it kept happening. Her books, boxed up and moved to the garage. The wind chimes she loved on the back porch, replaced with some modern-looking metal thing Karen brought over. The breaking point came one Saturday afternoon. I came home from a friend's house to find Karen standing in the living room with a box full of photo frames. She was wrapping them in newspaper like she was packing up for a move. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "What are you doing with those?" She gave me that fake smile. "Oh, just tidying up a little. These old pictures. Well, I figured it's time to make room for new memories." I just stared at her. "New memories? They're not hurting anyone," I said. "They belong here. She belongs here." Karen's smile didn't waver. By the time they announced the engagement, I was 17. Karen had moved in a few months earlier, and honestly, the house didn't feel like home anymore. All the little pieces of my mom were gone. Photos, keepsakes, even the blanket she used to wrap around us on movie nights. Karen had tucked it all away, like my mom was some inconvenient memory taking up too much space. Dad seemed different, not unhappy, but quieter, like he was going along with everything just to keep the peace. I didn't blame him, not entirely. Grief messes with people in different ways, but it hurt watching him let go so easily, while I clung to every scrap I could find. Then one night during dinner, Karen dropped the news. "So, we've decided on a date for the wedding," she said. beaming as she reached for Dad's hand across the table. Spring, in that vineyard just outside town. It's going to be beautiful, classy, elegant. I nodded politely, chewing slowly, just to buy time. I didn't trust myself to speak yet. And we want you to be part of it, she continued. Not just a guest. We want you to give a speech, something heartfelt. It would mean a lot. I looked up. A speech? Yes. A toast during the reception. It's tradition, you know, for the daughter to say a few words about her new mother. She smiled sweetly, but her tone sharpened as she added, "And I'd like you to call me Mom when you do, just once, for the toast." I sat there frozen, my fork halfway to my mouth. She wanted me to stand in front of a room full of people and erase my mother with one word. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just gave a small, tight smile and said, "Okay." That was it. Just okay. But inside, I felt something twist. It wasn't just anger. It was something colder, sharper, like a wire snapping in my chest. I knew then and there. I couldn't stop her from marrying my dad. I couldn't bring my mum back, but I could make sure my mum wasn't forgotten. Not by me, not by anyone in that room. So I started planning. Not a fight, not a confrontation, a tribute. From the outside, I looked like I was going along with everything. I smiled when Karen showed me swatches for the bridesmaids' dresses. I nodded when she asked me to help pick out flower arrangements. I even agreed to wear a blush pink gown she chose, said it would bring warmth to the photos. But behind that smile, I was building something of my own. See, every wedding has a slideshow. You know the kind. Pictures of the couple growing up, goofy baby photos, prom snapshots, a few sweet vacation moments, all played over some cheesy love song. Karen had asked me to help organize it, said I had a better eye for tech stuff. I told her I'd be happy to. That was my opening. I started by collecting all the usual photos. A few of Dad as a kid, Karen in her high school cheer uniform, awkward teenage smiles, that kind of thing. But as I built the timeline, I created space for something else, something personal, something real. I went digging through our old external, hard drives, the ones we hadn't touched in years. And there, buried in a folder marked family stuff, I found gold, home videos, clips of my mom at birthday parties, helping me with school projects, dancing in the kitchen in her slippers. Her laugh was exactly as I remembered it, light, unfiltered, contagious. I sat there watching for hours, tears rolling down my face, but for the first time in a long time, they weren't from sadness. It felt like I had her back, just for a little while. Then I found something else, a voicemail. It was from when I was about 10. I must have missed her call after school one day. She left a message that started with, "Hey baby, I just wanted to tell you I love you." Then she talked about picking up my favorite ice cream on the way home. She ended it with, "I'm proud of you. Don't ever forget that." I must have listened to that voicemail a dozen times. I knew right then, that's how I'd end the slideshow. So I wove it all together, piece by piece. I started with the usual wedding stuff, Karen and Dad's smiling photos, a few cute throwbacks to soften the mood. Then, without warning, I cut to the home video footage. No title slide, no explanation, just my mom, laughing, holding me, alive. The last 30 seconds were just a black screen and her voice. "Hey baby, I just wanted to tell you I love you." That was going to be the moment, the part they wouldn't forget. I wasn't doing it to be cruel. I wasn't trying to ruin anything. I just wanted my mum to be part of a day that should have been hers too. Karen had erased her from the house, but I was going to bring her back, right there, in front of everyone. The day of the wedding arrived bright and cloudless. One of those crisp spring mornings that feels like it's been handpicked for celebration. The vineyard looked like something out of a magazine. Rows of green stretching toward the hills, tables draped in white linen, and tiny fairy lights strung between oak trees like stars waiting to wake up. Karen was in her element. She floated around the venue in a sleek ivory dress, giving orders with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Guests arrived in clusters, laughing, hugging, taking pictures. Dad stood near the altar, adjusting his tie over and over again, looking both proud and overwhelmed. I played my part. Hair curled, makeup done, smile in place. Bridesmaid dress zipped and pinned just right. People kept telling me how grown up I looked, how proud my mum would be. I just nodded and thanked them, keeping my hands folded so no one would see how tightly I was clenching my fingers. The ceremony went by in a blur. Vows were exchanged. Rings slipped onto fingers. There were polite claps and a few teary sniffles. Karen beamed like she'd won something. Then came the reception. Dinner, speeches, dancing, laughter. The wine flowed freely, and everything seemed perfect on the surface. But I was waiting, counting down, when the DJ tapped his mic and said, "Before we open the floor for dancing, the bride and groom have prepared a special video to share their story." My heart started to pound. I watched Karen's face light up as the screen lit with the first image, a childhood photo of her holding a stuffed bear, followed by one of my dad as a boy fishing with his father. Soft music played. People smiled and chuckled at the sweet, awkward moments. Then, right on cue, the tone shifted. Without warning, the image faded to a shaky home video. Me as a toddler, running through sprinklers in the backyard. Then my mum appeared. She was laughing, chasing after me with a towel. The sound of her voice filled the room like sunlight through a dusty window. Gasps rippled across the crowd. A few people turned toward me, eyebrows raised, touched but confused. Karen stiffened in her chair. I saw her hand tighten around her wine. Glass, clip after clip played. My mom reading me bedtime stories, kissing my scraped knee, blowing out birthday candles beside me. The music faded out completely. The room was silent now. Even the servers had stopped moving. And then, the final moment, a black screen, then her voice. "Hey baby, I just wanted to tell you I love you." The words were soft, grainy, like they'd traveled through time just to find me. "I'm proud of you. Don't ever forget that." When it ended, there was a moment of complete stillness. A few people wiped their eyes. Some whispered to one another. One of my aunts outright sobbed into her napkin. Then came the clapping. Not loud, not wild, just gentle, steady, heartfelt. People clapped for her. Karen didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her smile had vanished, replaced with a stunned, tight expression, like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. She leaned toward my dad and said something through her teeth, but he didn't look at her. He was still staring at the screen, eyes glassy. I didn't say, "Mom," during my speech. I stood up, thanked the guests, and spoke briefly about love, memory, and how some people stay with us, even when they're no longer here to walk beside us. That was all. It was enough. The next few days after the wedding were tense, to put it gently. Karen barely spoke to me. She wasn't cold exactly, just tight-lipped, like someone who'd taken a blow to the ego and was still nursing the bruise. But I didn't need her to say anything. Her silence was its own kind of answer. My dad, though, he surprised me. The morning after the wedding, I came downstairs expecting the usual awkward silence. Instead, he was in the living room, staring at an old framed photo in his hands. It was of Mom holding me as a baby. I hadn't seen it in over a year. He didn't say much, just looked at me and said quietly, "She would have been proud of you." That one sentence cracked something open in me. All those months I'd spent trying to keep her memory alive, afraid it would disappear the moment I stopped pushing, it all suddenly felt worth it. Later that week, I noticed the house beginning to change. One by one, photos of Mom began to reappear, not shoved in a back hallway, but in the living room, in Dad's office, even on the mantel again. Her favorite mug, somehow still intact, returned to the kitchen cabinet. Dad didn't make a big deal of it, but I could tell something had shifted. Karen didn't fight it, not openly anyway. Maybe because she realized she'd overplayed her hand. Or maybe because the people around her had seen, really seen, who my mum was and how deeply she mattered. At family gatherings after that, people asked more about Mom, shared stories, told me how much I looked like her. Even Karen's side of the family, who barely knew her, seemed moved by the tribute. My grandmother on Dad's side called it the most beautiful part of the whole day. Karen never asked me to call her Mom again, and I never did. We coexisted after that, polite, distant, civil. She had her place, but I made sure Mom had hers too, and it was one that no one could take away again. It wasn't revenge, not really. It was a quiet victory, a way of saying she was here, she mattered, and she always will. And that, more than anything else, was all I ever wanted.